Well, hello and a very, very good evening to all of our viewers. We hope that you are well and that you're keeping safe wherever it is that you are watching us from. My name is Tessie Carvin and I will be the moderator for today's discussion. It is a New Times roundtable on the DR Congo crisis. Now, a lot has been happening in the DR Congo, and this is just the first in a series of many conversations that we will be having on this crisis. And I do have with me an esteemed panel of guests to help me drive this conversation. I'll begin with Dr. Joseph Nkurunziza Ryarasa. He is a medical doctor and a social justice activist who is the executive director at Never Again Rwanda. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you.
Karibu sana. We also have Miss Sylvie Nsanga. She is a rights activist and a Pan-African feminist with close family ties links in the Eastern DRC. Sylvie, good to have you.
Thank you very much.
Karibu sana. I also have with us Mr. James Karuhanga. He is my colleague and he is a news editor at the New Times. He actually has a vast experience in writing on the DRC crisis. James, karibu sana.
Thank you. Asante.
Karibu sana. And we also will be joined later on call by Dr. Frederick Goloba Mutebi. He is a Ugandan-Rwandan political analyst, an academic and a researcher, and a former executive director of Makerere Institute of Social Research in Uganda. Now, let's just begin this conversation with you, James Karuhanga. Just paint for us a picture for anybody, probably who's not familiar with what's happening in the Eastern DRC. There's been recent developments. Paint for us a picture of what is happening.
My thinking is that maybe you want to look at the highlights in the past 10 days.
Yes.
When the Alliance FDLR Congo moved in and captured Goma. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of fighting. The 2 days before they moved in and circled and captured the city. But even then, after the capture of the city, you and I were in Goma when Kone Nanga, the coordinator of the rebel movement, announced that their aim is to move on till they get to Kinshasa. That means capture power. After that, they have consolidated and really fully taken over Goma. Just a day ago, they announced put a new administration in Goma. We have a new governor, Joseph Bahati. I don't know what that means, but reading his name, Bahati, we all speak Swahili, I guess here. Mm-hmm. I don't know if this means good luck to Goma and the region. But again, after capturing Goma, they continued moving further south. Mm. They did announce a unilateral ceasefire that was to take effect, I think, Wednesday. But even then, it didn't hold for maybe reason that we could look into further. They already captured some territory in South Kivu. Yeah.
Mm. Is there anybody, maybe Sylvie, that you'd want to add to this history of events that has been happening that has led to this moment that we are now in currently?
For me, I would first say people need to understand that this is a geopolitics problem where people are divided not only by our ancestral groupings before. We came to adopt the colonial politics of divide and rule. So different ethnic groups started being victims, including the Rwandophone Tutsi communities, because they were told every time to go back to Rwanda because their land was no longer for them. They were denied citizenship. There was already question of citizenship long ago. And we do understand that identity is really something important and is a human rights issue. I remember as young as I was in different conferences which happened in Congo, where they were discussing about issues like Conférence Nationale Souveraine, which I can call like Mushikirano here, led by the late Monseigneur Monsengo, where already the issue of identity for Banyarwanda was a big issue. First, Banyarwanda was denied access to some of those spaces. There was already political discrimination where they couldn't belong. And political marginalization, discrimination was now amplified by the genocide of Tutsi in Rwanda. It's where I want people to understand how Rwanda comes in and how the FDLR comes in. In 94, actually before 94, there was other association of FDLR by then in Herahamwe here and some communities in Congo. So there was other movements like Magrivi in Congo, which was already killing the community of Tutsi, and many of my grandfathers, uncles, aunties, they died actually before 90s, because even then there was this deep discrimination, and there was already a certain relationship between those Magrivi group in DRC, eastern part of Congo, and the government of Rwanda by then. So in 94, I was in my early teen age. I do vividly remember how refugee came from Rwanda, because I was born and grew up in Goma, how they were coming from Rwanda to DRC. As many people understand and know better than me, the international laws guiding refugee were, when they came in Congo, they weren't disarmed. They weren't put far from Rwanda, for example. So they occupied a big, big camp, which was after Goma toward Masisi. I don't know, you were in Himbi, and after Himbi, the same route, it where Mugunga was. It wasn't far, and it was between Goma and people who were living in Masisi, because there was a big community of Rwandophone Tutsi in Masisi and other places. Already, those refugees being in Mugunga, that meant that Rwandophone Tutsi couldn't cross that part because they were killed. I lost my cousin. He was on a motor there, Père Sonam. I don't want just to say his name. Because he was just crossing from Goma to the other side because of how he looked. Already discrimination and perpetuation of the genocide, which happened in 94, started then. And something people forget is the involvement of FDLR in the mining sector. Actually, mining field, if you can call that, they are controlled by FDLR for all those years, because when they went to Mugunga and Masisi, those side, they are the one who are even selling to other people who are going to resell back. So the management of mining, and they are taxing even the Congolese people when they go from one region to another, is really managed by FDLR. So people need to understand the context from the geopolitics, from the genocide of Tutsi in Rwanda, and now what is happening today is a result of a crime which was neglected, which was not managed, and we are seeing now today the result because of the irresponsibility of the government of Congo, but also of the international community, because in 2004 already the UN declared FDLR as something to watch, as a criminal,
a terrorist
group.
Dr. Mutebi, thank you so much for making the time to speak to us. In this whole Eastern DRC situation, I want you to speak specifically on the role and implication of the involvement of the genocidal FDLR militia. Do you think that somebody is actually just intentionally preserving this genocidal militia? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, as you would know, this genocidal militia, the FDLR, is really at the root of the crisis we see in the Kivus. First of all, from the time they entered the then Zaire, after having committed the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, they took to persecuting Tutsi communities in the DRC and made the areas inhabited by this particular group very insecure. that eventually many of them had to run and leave the DRC and seek refuge in neighboring countries, Rwanda being one of them. And as we know, there are over 100,000 of them in refugee camps. There are tens of thousands in Uganda. I understand there are some in Tanzania and some in Burundi. So after they had pushed these people out, they continued to persecute those that stayed behind. Now, that is one side of the story. The other side is that these people, since they left Rwanda, their ambition or their overriding ambition is to return to Rwanda and do what they call finishing the job. That is finishing the job, quote unquote, of killing Tutsis in Rwanda. So this second strand of the danger they pose enjoins Rwanda, or the government of Rwanda as a responsible government, to be on the watch, because they are not going to wait for them to train and arm themselves from within the DRC, where they have been given space both by the government of the DRC, but also by the UN, MONUSCO specifically, to roam freely, do business, arm themselves, train. The government of Rwanda is not going to wait for them to train, arm themselves, and prepare to attack it, and then tackle them after they have entered Rwanda. Rwanda is a small country. It can't afford to have this group attack it, kill people, burn up things, and destabilize it. Now, this is where we get to what Rwanda, or the government of Rwanda, calls its security posture. What that means, as far as I understand it, is that the government of Rwanda keeps a very close watch on what this group is doing. And whenever they sense that these people are becoming an ever-present danger, probably preparing to attack Rwanda or infiltrate it, they take preemptive action to make sure that it doesn't happen. Now, at the same time, the DRC government has been really deaf to Rwanda's appeals to help with tackling this group. Now, of course, there have been instances when the government or various governments of the DRC have allowed Rwanda to send in forces. From what I have heard, and I have made great effort to try and understand exactly what happens when Rwandan forces go into the DRC. Now, from what I have gathered, whenever this happens, because of the links FDLR elements have with Congolese army officers in terms of doing business together, but also engaging in all kinds of activities together, some of the DRC officers warn them before these operations happen, so that they can then leave the area and go somewhere and then come back after the operations have ended. And usually these operations don't last a very long time. The DRC, or even Eastern DRC, is a very, very large space. These guys can retreat to any area of Eastern DRC and stay there until the operations have ended. These operations last 2 months or a few months, and then the Rwandan forces have to go back to Rwanda. Then they can come back and occupy the spaces where they were. And then, to make matters worse, when M23 came onto the scene, and some of the people in M23 are relatives or children or family members of those displaced people in refugee camps, when they came up, the DRC government embedded some of these FDLR elements into its army, armed them together with various militias to help fight M23. Now, of course, what that means is if the DRC government, in collaboration with the FDLR and other militias, manage to defeat M23, then it means that the next thing they can do is then set their eyes on Rwanda. How could any responsible government allow something like that to happen? So the people who comment on this and just focus on, Rwanda is supporting M23, Rwanda is supporting M23, they willfully or ignorantly forget the work. So if somebody says FDLR is a core problem, if FDLR is eliminated or neutralized, and neutralizing it means depriving it of space to train, depriving it of the capacity to acquire weapons and threaten Rwanda, and also threaten Tutsi communities in the DRC, then we have the beginnings of resolving the problem. As long as FDLR is in Congo, as long as FDLR can cause insecurity in Congo for Tutsi communities there, as long as it continues to threaten Rwanda as a country, this crisis is not going to end. When it started in 2012, this is what some of us who watch this region were saying, that look, you cannot hope to defeat M23 and resolve this problem, because M23 will emerge again. 12 years down the road, we're exactly where we were 12 years ago. So anybody who ignores the threat that FDLR poses to Rwandophone Tutsi communities in the DRC and the threat it poses to Rwanda as a country will not be able to resolve this crisis.
I hear you. And before I let you go, Saturday we are expecting the peace talks in Dar es Salaam. What do you think they should prioritize, and what are your expectations? Do you think we are to expect a new dawn after Saturday?
Having seen how the government of Congo has been behaving in recent times, having listened to President Tshisekedi vowing never to talk to M23, never wanting to resolve this politically, but seeking a military victory over M23, I have no grounds for being optimistic that he's going to change his position or that his stubbornness is going to reduce. But fortunately, the leaders of the East African community have been very clear that the DRC government must talk to M23 and try to resolve this problem. Now, the SADC countries which believed, again blindly, that they could help the DRC solve this problem militarily, I think have now come to the understanding that this is not going to happen. And so what is likely to happen is that there might be a meeting of minds between EAC leaders and SADC leaders in terms of pushing the DRC government to prioritize a political solution rather than a military one. And if the DRC government talks to M23, one of the main items on the agenda is going to be FDLR. How to neutralize FDLR and stop it from being a nuisance to Tutsi communities in the DRC and being a potential threat to Rwanda. Now, once that becomes a priority, then we move very close to resolving this crisis. If that doesn't happen, then I'm afraid maybe another 12 years from now, we will still be facing this same problem.
I hear you. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights.
You're welcome.
My question to you, Dr. Joseph, is hasn't the world learned anything?
What I can say that it seems the world hasn't learned lessons from the Jewish Holocaust, because in 1945 the world had said never again, meaning that the world would join to fight any violence against humankind. But then later on, after 50 years, we saw the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994, and which led to what is happening in the DRC, irrespective of the fact that the DRC, before that, they had their own historical or colonial legacies. So having said that, when you see what has transpired from 1945, and also people would think that the world had got some lessons after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. So, but in a nutshell, what I would say is that it's about interests. And when you look at the interventions, when you look at the narratives, it's about interests. So if there are no interests, people are going to be left to die. Mm-hmm. So, and I think in Africa, that's what we haven't grasped well, to know our interests, to know our values, so that we can be able to join hands if there is anything that comes to us or to our neighbor. So we've failed to unify as Africans, so that we can be able to work together in addressing our own challenges. For example, when you look at what is happening in the West has joined hands to fight against Putin. Why? They are defending their interests. So, and what they are doing is being justified. No one has condemned it. But when it comes to issues in developing countries, there are lots of key players. Of course, there is the West, there is Russia, there is China, and there is also we ourselves as Africans who have not yet known what we want. So, FDLR, after the genocide, I think they've been used by the DRC, of course, due to the fact that there is some governance gap. They have governance challenges. So, so if any country has governance challenges, so that means that majority of its institutions will be dysfunctional. So, DRC has had, even during Mobutu, and the reason why he was defeated in 6 months, it's because he had no systems. He had not empowered his military. He had not empowered other institutions. The country had issues, as my sister was saying. The Banyarwanda issues in DRC, I think they started very long time. I think around 60s and way back in 1930s, from 1930s, 60 and then 65. So all those issues affected the governance of the entire country. So when the Interahamwe crossed, who changed to FDLR, so they exploited that weakness that was in former Zaire. Even after the 1997 war of Kabila, and after falling out with those who had supported him, he turned towards the FDLR. So FDLR has been like a springboard for the DRC, and that's why it has been very hard for DRC to disassociate with FDLR, because they don't have internal capacity their military architecture has no internal capacity to be able to defend the country. So those are some of the challenges that FDLR is that makes it active in the DRC. So because it's seen as if it's protecting DRC, and because of that, it is very hard for DRC to disassociate with it. So having said that, and coming back to your original question, I think it's about interests. It's not because the world didn't learn anything from 1945, 1994, but it's because of interests. So it's interests that are driving the global politics at the moment.
Interesting. Dr. Joseph, you brought up a very interesting word. You said interests. Various groups have various interests. And I want us to shift now to SADC, the SADC forces, and specifically the South African forces. Do you think, maybe Karanga, we can start with you, do you think the SADC forces have done more harm than good?
We expect an East African community, a joint East African community and South African Development Community Heads of State Summit. Focus is Congo and the crisis in Eastern Congo. You may want to ask, what took them so long as two blocs to sit together and discuss, find a common ground, find a solution? The fact that over a year ago now, the East African community had deployed a force, troops, to Eastern Congo to do what they deemed was the right thing to do. And these forces were kicked out by the Congolese government, preferring the SADC forces, feeds into your question. So they are doing more harm than good, being on the wrong side of history. Yeah.
We've seen EAC and SADC taking very different approaches to this crisis. EAC more of peace talks, but SADC going the military way and fighting alongside, the Congolese army. Why this different stance from these two blocs?
I mean, it's because we have a problem. The East African community's position is that whatever is happening in Eastern DR Congo or DRC is a political problem that requires a political solution. And dialogue, the political solution, is the best way to go. Let people talk about the issues, find solutions. And basically, war is not the right way to go. And here comes SADC accepting to take on an offensive posture, and it deploys troops to engage militarily and fight the rebels. The divergency, the disagreement is in itself a big problem.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Sylvie, let me bring you in, and we are still talking about interests. Burundi is another country that has shown interest, and I'm very curious to know, what is a tie between Tshisekedi of Congo and Ndayishimiye of Burundi? Because we've seen the Burundians taking the side of the Congolese and fighting alongside the Congolese army. And we also know it's documented that FDLR, and Burundi also have links. It is known. So what is really happening? What is the interest of Burundi?
Maybe going back is that for some of us who have lived different waves of this conflict and war, we are not surprised of seeing different countries coming in, because at the time when Kabila the father was fighting, the government of Kinshasa was being helped by Angola, SADC. So I was young, but these words, we used to call it SADC by then in French. So it means this alliance with different countries of region are not new. Maybe many people, because now there is social media and there is the way information is going quickly, people seeing the image they are seeing. But for a Congolese of North Kivu and South Kivu, this is just a repetition of the same thing which have been happening. They have been fighting in 96, I was still living in Congo, and in 97. So I'm just taking Burundian as another country which has been involved in one way or another. I'm taking them personally first as mercenary. Because if we can remember, maybe it's not public, when the Burundian entered in DRC recently to support them, there was a deal. Burundi is being paid heavily for them to come to support Congo. And also they share the same genocide ideology. So there are different links and why Burundi is there. Because Burundi so many times has been having issues with Rwanda. And we know that. And for Burundi and Congo to ally together, it's for them to join force and fight a common enemy. So that is known, that is documented, but at the same time, Burundians are being paid. There are so many reports which have come from their soldiers who were captured. Actually, since they started fighting with M23, many of them have been captured by M23, who have been giving testimony, how they are there, why they are there, and how they have been being paid. And he has been really bringing them also without their consent. I know in military, it's more about following the guidance of your leader, but many of them have been actually, when they arrive in Congo, they also disappear and they go to other side where they feel safe, maybe to the side of M23. So for me and many others, this is not surprising because many people are saying, I'm afraid that this war is going to be regional. And my response is no. This war has always been regional, actually, because SNDP, which was the second, there was first AFDEL led by Kabila the father. There was SNDP. There was, at the time, SNDP was also fighting by different of those forces. And remember, sometimes those forces come officially, but their presence has been always there. So there is nothing really special. Today we are hearing South Africa saying that they are going to come and now fight with Rwanda, but it's not the first time for them to be there in different mission. And by the way, even if those forces are coming, Kinshasa, with their bad governance, they are really losing a lot because they are investing heavily in this war by paying other people to fight for them instead of investing in their country's development. So I don't think, I'm not in support of any rebel movement. I'm in support of whoever who promotes justice, who speak on behalf of the people. And you can see that if you read what M23 has been asking, SNDP has been asking, it was simple. We just want to live peaceful. We just want to be part of this country development. We don't want our parents to remain in exile because I personally have my relative in those refugee camps in Rwanda, in Uganda, and globally, everywhere in the world where they have been sent by either UNHCR or by relative in different ways. Some are even in Burundi, and with the recent also ethnic issues in Burundi, some have been even victim there. So people need to understand that Burundi has close link to Congo because they share the same genocide ideology. They feel they have one enemy, but which for me, I don't think it's really Rwanda or the president of Rwanda, as they have been saying. It's just because they don't want to be accountable to those violence and injustices they have been promoting for so many years. I would say I'm like a second generation in my community of people who have been living this abuse. And what M23 does not want to see is that us at our age, the young people, I may call myself today, to leave this status to the young generation. And I think, and I'm happy so many Congolese, when I mean Congolese is that there are those they call the true Congolese and those who are not Congolese. Let me buy the term, which itself is discriminatory. Those they call true Congolese are now understanding that actually the government of Kinshasa has been failing them. And talking about what is going to happen in the meeting, as you were asking my brother here, is that for me, I'm not optimistic because seeing the current I'm not a political analyst, but I would say nothing will happen if Kinshasa still have the same leadership. When I mean leadership is the president, his minister, and everyone, because we saw the Minister of Justice calling for violence and discrimination,
Yeah.
and how that minister is going to give justice, because the issue in Congo also is lack of accountability, lack of justice, corruption in different layers. So for me, the current government and the leadership, I have lost trust in them, because they are not even afraid of calling a cow a dog, or saying this color, which is white, is red. They have been in many times on table. And by the way, why East African leaders lost trust in them, because I still believe in the first series of meetings which happened, there are clear questions which the East African leaders were asking to Tshisekedi. Do you agree that those people are part of your constituency? Yes. If you agree, why can't you solve some of the simple issues they are asking? So he could agree, but never implement them. I think we all remember how he chased the East African Community Force,
Yeah.
because they weren't acting by his order, but like he wanted them to fight alongside, and they didn't agree. So for Tshisekedi, whoever who will partner with him is the person or the country which will accept to come to fight on his side, and is the person who will buy the narrative he wants to pass, that the issue he has is Rwanda. But he forget that his father has been an eternal opponent of the Congo, because since I was in primary school, we used to miss days of school, because IDPS, his father political movement was just looting like what we saw. And by the way, for me, seeing people looting in Kinshasa wasn't something surprising, because I grew up into that kind of manifestation. When you have to disagree with the government with something, you are going to loot and take people's things. So for me, I see a kind of immaturity in the president he is, because we need also to understand how Tshisekedi grew up. He's a young man who grew up by then. He grew up from an elite parent who has been in opposition, but a little bit privileged. So he went to Europe when he was young. He lived there. He never went to school. He benefited from walking into the streets of Belgium, and
Yes.
he comes because of the name of the father, take the country, and people actually, many Congolese saw Tshisekedi as a young person who's gonna be transformative, because they knew the ideology of the father.
Yeah.
And he got the position, but from day one, today he's taking this conflict as a reason why he did not perform, but that is not true. Maybe another thing is that on social media and loudly, people are seeing that Tshisekedi gaining international media by saying he's really working well on diplomacy, by making known that Congo has this issue, but he forget that developing a country is not about just traveling to Europe. It's about making sure you address even the issues of your own country. So for me and many Congolese, we don't have confidence in Tshisekedi. He doesn't have the capacity to lead the country, and was a country in conflict.
Interesting, because we were in Goma the other day, and there were all these protests that were against Tshisekedi, and they're saying we do not have the confidence in him. And on January 29th, it was M23 took Goma, and there is a narrative out here that the humanitarian situation in Goma right now is worse than it was before. And this narrative is out there, and the international media is running with it. I don't know why it is being perpetrated, but what is the situation on ground? Maybe I can start with you, Karuhanga, then we go to Joseph.
It's like I think mentioned earlier on. I think there is a deliberate. Did you call it deliberate ignorance?
Yeah.
Voluntary ignorance. Goma is peaceful. Of course, after the war, it's, the Rebel Alliance is trying to patch up things. Ensure, of course, right now we know that they have an administration working to ensure that the whole city has power, internet, water. It's not easy, but they are getting there. But for heaven's sake, Goma is peaceful. There are no more bombs. There are no more bombs or rockets being fired by the Congolese army into neighboring Rwanda's Rubavu. Across the border, the Rwandans also at peace. Business is back to normal. But if you, like you just said, the international media or even, the international media will feed a totally different narrative.
Yeah.
For reasons you and I might guess. That's the dilemma we have. That's the dilemma we live in.
Yeah.
Ulterior motives.
Yeah. But the truth on ground is that life has gone back to normal.
If you want to get to
Goma.
know what is going on in Goma now, go in there,
Let's
you'll
cross.
see the truth.
I hear you. Dr. Joseph, I want to bring you in as we are almost bringing this to a close. I'm curious to know why has President Tshisekedi and even previous administrations refused to embrace the Congolese Rwandaphones who are there and watched as atrocities are meted out, as these innocent people are killed, raped, cannibalism has been reported there. Why have they refused to embrace this community of people?
I would say that because the Congolese have been indoctrinated that all the challenges they have, it's due to either to Rwanda or to Rwandaphones. So it's very easier to bring that narrative if you have your own challenges and you say that no, we are having these challenges because of the Rwandaphones. So because the society has been indoctrinated, so it's very easier to the population to focus on the Rwandaphones than focusing on the gaps that the leadership has.
Yeah.
So it's I would say that it has been unfortunate that when Kabila Senior got to power in May 1997, the world and people expected to see the change, to address what he was fighting against, but he also fell in the same trap, and he continued the stereotypes. Finally, it's as I said, that we as Africans, we've failed to sit and analyze what are the causes of the issues we have, because given the way Congo is, various corporations and countries, individuals have interest in it. So they would enjoy if it stays ungovernable and very disorganized. So he's talking about the media. So who supports that media? Media used to be independent.
Yes.
But nowadays we are seeing that the media is not the media that we used to learn about. So media is also corrupted to an extent that they are pushing the narratives of what those big either corporations or countries that want, so that they keep portraying an image that things are not normal in Goma. Finally, it's when you look at, if you analyze the media today, there is no media that has acknowledged why the M23 is fighting.
Mm-hmm.
What you read, it is M23 backed by Rwanda.
Yes.
M23 backed by Rwanda. But no media, I mean international media, that has documented the reasons to why this group is fighting. So they've continuously maintained assassinating its character, so that people shouldn't have sympathy of to why they are fighting. So I would say that the international media have also, I would say that they are not contributing to the peaceful resolution to this, but they are adding the continuation of violence against the Congolese Tutsis.
So, as we bring this to a close, let me begin with you again, Dr. Joseph, while you still have the microphone. Saturday is a big day, I believe, as for the first time, EAC-SADC will be on the same table, driving these peace talks. Are you hopeful? Are you positive that something will come out of this?
So I'm very skeptical because these leaders have been meeting. It's not the first time, and I guess it's not the last time. But have they been honest to themselves? So due to lack of frank conversations, that's why issues haven't been addressed. Because each party, some of those countries have their own interests. So, and two, it's only then. There is no civil society. There are no women, and women are always victims of war and violence. So it's only these leaders.
Yeah.
So there needs to be other parties that can also help to force them to have frank and open conversation. But let's hope for the best, because I think also the M23 has challenged them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Karanga, your face says a lot. Are you hopeful?
I want to be hopeful, and it's a good thing to be hopeful, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what comes out on Saturday, but some good part of me wants to be optimistic. This has not happened, but finally it is happening.
Mm.
There's a reason why it is happening, but let's wait and see. The Congolese president has not attended how many EAC summits in the recent past? If he attends this one, that's something. SADC never consulted. I don't think they consulted the EAC when they were moving in or deploying to Eastern DRC. But now that they are coming together to talk, let's give them a benefit of doubt. Something good might come out. But I agree with my brother here his concerns are legit. It's because of what we have seen happening in the recent past. Yeah.
Sylvie, after we spoke to Dr. Mutebi, he said, unless they address the FDLR issue, then we'll be going back 12 years, 12 years from now, we'll still be talking about this issue. Are you hopeful after Saturday?
I think I have said it. I'm not hopeful. I'm not seeing something positive coming. The same way the UN Security Council could also have solved a piece of it. I didn't see it. Being myself part of this community victim, I'm just seeing the only way out is community to protect themselves. I don't think Rwandans know better than anyone. I think in '94 they saw how for 3 months no one really came as a big bloc, yet they knew what was happening, and in the UN to stop the genocide which was happening. Because I haven't seen the truth being centered in those meetings, either the Security Council, as we saw recently, and all those East African. For me, my community is being exterminated. There is an ethnic cleansing, which they don't want to admit, which they are confusing to economic war, to trying to run away from the exact award. And I don't see today, after the speeches I'm seeing, those blocks leaders to admit the truth of what is happening, not because I'm promoting M23, not at all, but as a victim of this part of our life has been into moving. Because for me, as a feminist, I still believe that peace is collective until all my community is considered, is integrated. Other women, despite that I'm advocating for women's rights, but I can't even advocate for my community, for those who have been raped, for those who have been captured like slave. Today, as I'm speaking, I can't count the number of my relatives in Kinshasa prisons, Makala, Ndolo, and others. So already, the problem is there, is not being named out. Those who are accountable are there. They are going to sit on the same table. It will be really dishonest for me, who's sitting here and not thinking about the pain of those who are into refugee camp, who have lost almost everything. I think in the past 3 years, not even going in the past, it was hard for me to spend a week without knowing a relative in Congo who was killed, who was banned, who was raped. The image was so, for some people it was just simple image on social media, going in WhatsApp group, but for us it was really deep. Yeah. And by the way, we weren't mourning anymore. We weren't even sharing. I could have a meeting, I continue going to that meeting, because anyway, I know that as I'm mourning this one, they're killing the other one. So this war has been taken lightly, and I'm very disappointed by all those African leaders, because when I read the agenda, when I read those beautiful words into the statement or the minutes of each meeting, I just feel a deep sense of bitterness, knowing that it's a matter of life for some communities. And I think many Congolese, you people saw today the meeting which happened in stadium, the normal Congolese, no matter the tribes they are coming from, for them this is a survival also, because they are going to do their business, they are going to sleep at least the night, they are women, girls, and they are not going to be raped anymore until they really address, and I saw actually many recommendations from the SADC meeting, what they want to bring there. I'm not seeing the real deep issues people are going to discuss. So I don't know why. For me, I even say that it's taxpayer money going into all those meetings which have been happening. That meeting could be even online, maybe to reduce even the cost, and say let's even support Congo maybe into other things than moving. So I don't, and there is this dishonesty he was talking about. Maybe I want, in concluding, coming to that, Bintu heading the MONUSCO for some years. Bintu represented UNICEF in Rwanda. She was a close friend as an activist. She left Rwanda, she went to Burundi. So if there is someone who could really explain well this conflict, was Bintu. But see what she portrayed to the UN. The SG is not going to come to Goma to learn what is happening. He depended on reports from Bintu, who was heading the MONUSCO. The same way, all those international NGOs, for them, they care about their salaries. MONUSCO people, they care about their salary. And I think Congolese saw that before everything, actually, the MONUSCO staff left. Yeah. And they went. So there is this dishonesty from the NGO and the NGO and the human rights movement, deliberately refusing to call this war what it is and what it is not, and give it, because the solution is there clearly, but it has been refused. Because I was thinking that one day they will wake up and say, let's close MONUSCO, because it has never, because the whole mission of MONUSCO was clear. Even FDLR issues was part of the first mission, them coming. They didn't do that. And they went to fight alongside the genocide. Yeah. So for me, if the UN itself, the big organization, we believe, which anchor the human rights values, the charter, is being dishonest to this level, and our African leaders have been corrupted. They have been gaining money from Tshisekedi today to do the publicity, as actually the musicians, the influencers are being paid by the government of Kinshasa. For me, there are so many reasons. They could just table one thing, as our brother said before leaving, they call the FDLR problematic. Yeah. Itself, if it's solved today, it can be a big relief, because they perpetuated this narrative, the genocide, and everyone picked it. And if you see in studies, I think just Dr. Joseph would be the best person to say, a genocide ideology is something which is so deep and hard to finish until different parties acknowledge what is happening. So I'm not optimistic. I don't think something will come. And for me and my community, it's a matter of survival. The government has never taken charge, so our communities are going to take charge of themselves. I'm not defining supporting M23, but if M23 today is called to stop, even to give Goma City, I think M26, M30 will come, because it's just a matter of survival.
I hear you. Yeah. Sylvie, thank you, because for you, it's not just a discussion. It's personal. You have family, you have relatives. As you said, as you mourn for this one, you hear news of another. So for you, this is deeply personal. And thank you so much for sharing your insights and for being truthful on your opinion on this matter. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Joseph Nkurunziza. Thank you so much, Sylvie Nsanga. Thank you so much, James Karuhanga, and even to Dr. Frederick Goloba Mutebi, who joined us on call for this very important and timely conversation. We call it a roundtable on the DR Congo crisis. And as I said at the beginning, this is just a first in a series of many conversations that we will have. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you for your time. We will do this again.